and this live is probably already started. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So today I'm with Tatiana Pudel, CPA, who is in Central Florida and who I've had the honor of coaching, working with. And for those of you that don't know me, I am Leslie Leondis, owner of Next Path Coaching. And I have invited Tatiana on here because we've had a lot of misconceptions around what is tax planning versus what is tax prep. What do people actually need? What does business owners actually need? So I invited her here so we could actually just kind of chat around it. We're just going to do a very informal chat. So Tatiana, welcome. Thanks for being here with me. And can you just tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm a CPA in Florida. I started my career at a big firm. I spent 10 years there, and I realized that they are so proactive throughout the year and so intentional in every decision that they make. And the small businesses were kind of missing that advisory side of it. And I was like, why not bring that to small businesses? So that's kind of how I got into this. And then I also have two small kids, so I wanted more time with my kids and to have more ownership of my schedule. And I know, Leslie, you and your team have been working with me to kind of figure out, okay, how can I continue to serve my clients at the highest level, but still have some boundaries in place and continue and like have time for my kids and prioritize my kids. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you said that the small business was missing that advisory piece. And I know a lot of small business owners don't actually know what that advisory piece is. Can you break that down a little bit of what that actually looks like for small business?
Yeah, so I mean, small businesses, like to them, tax and even bookkeeping and accounting is an afterthought, right? Like they think it's just an annoying compliance thing hanging out there that they have to do. And what they don't realize is that number one, it actually, you can't really make decisions in your businesses and grow without having good numbers and understanding those numbers. And then number two is if you're paying way more than you should be paying, that's affecting your wealth building, your bottom line, right? So being proactive throughout the year is like making intentional business decisions, knowing what the financial implication of those decisions are going to be, whether it be tax or otherwise, and just having somebody that understands those numbers to kind of talk through it with you, explain your options to you, and just guide you along the way versus just making decisions blind and then dealing with the consequences after the fact when it's time to file.
Mm-hmm. So I know one thing we were talking about before we got on here, and you like working with businesses throughout the year. So not just at this time of year. And you said something to me like why you like to do that. Can you go into that a little bit more? Because it's one of those things you see right now as people are bringing their stuff in.
Yeah, well, I just see so many missed opportunities and so many people spending money that they shouldn't necessarily be spending. Like, why are you giving money to the IRS that you don't have to, that you can give to your employees or to yourself? Um, and then from a personal side, and I don't know that I mentioned this to you earlier, but like my parents have been serial entrepreneurs their whole lives. And once I started working with small businesses and like having more conversations with my dad about his business and his finances, I realized so many of the bad business decisions that he made in the past is just from a lack of understanding the
Mm-hmm.
numbers.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky enough, I guess, that I enjoy understanding the numbers. Like to me, it's fun. So if I can help business owners make those decisions and feel confident that, hey, okay, if I want to hire somebody else or like if I want to sell my business this way versus that way, this is how it's going to impact me. I love being able to do that and being proactive about it.
Because one of the things I know you and I both hear all the time is I made an S corp election, but it was way before that they were actually ready to make that S corp election. Do you want to dive into that a little bit? Because I know
Yeah, I
we've
mean,
talked about it in our coaching a lot.
that's just basic. I think like TikTok advice craziness is that every small business should be an S corp. I get so many new leads or clients that I'm talking to that have businesses that are S corps, and I ask them like, "Why are you an S corp?" Right? Like, what was the reason behind making that decision? And they're like, "We have no idea." And literally, there's accountants, CPAs, preparers out there just making blanket elections without explaining to them how to maintain it, um, how to take advantage of the S Corp election, and what are the downsides? Because there are downsides of the S Corp
Hmm.
election too. And so I always tell my clients, like, if you're gonna make an S Corp election, number one, you don't need to know the technical, but you need to understand why and how it's saving you money.
Yeah.
And then if it's not going to save you money, don't make it because you're just adding a layer of complexity to your business and to your compliance. You're adding expenses. And then there are some situations where I'm actually like, my recommendation is I would rather you pay a little bit more in tax and not make that S Corp election to have flexibility. Because
Hmm.
an S Corp is very inflexible. And if you are in business with a friend or with a random third party, it's sometimes disadvantageous to have that inflexibility.
Yeah.
So not having that conversation ahead of time, what are you losing? Like, yes, okay, you might be gaining some tax savings, but what are you losing by making that S corp strategy?
Yeah,
That's a
absolutely.
missing piece that I see happening a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know both of us see that people will say, well, you mean I have to file another return? So I have to pay you for another tax
Hmm.
return. And so that's a part of what you're talking about. That's one of the disadvantages is it is
Yeah,
another tax compliance. And it also, in some states, it's an actual state filing
yeah,
requirement as well. So having somebody like you that comes in and says, hey, let's look at everything together and see if does this make sense versus taking information that that it's not specific to you. It's just a blanket statement.
yeah.
So how do you work with people that are like this that say, "Hey, Tatiana, that I have this small business. I don't know what I'm doing. What are the steps? What do we do when we come to you?"
Yeah, so I mean, whenever we get a new client, we review their prior year returns. We have a questionnaire that we have them fill out and we go over all their information with them. And then have a conversation of, what are your goals? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? What is the purpose behind your business? Why are you in business with so and so, right? And what is the intent of being in business with that person? And how does that relationship work? And then based off of that, we talk about what makes sense for them, what doesn't. Like, we throw some ideas around, nothing formal. We do have formal tax planning that we get engaged to do, but we are always trying to look out for our clients' best interests. We are never just putting the numbers on the form. Like, we want to make sure, like, if we see something that doesn't seem right, or like, are you sure you want to do this? We always bring it up to them. And with a lot of our business clients, they see so much value in that. They're actually working with us on a formal year-round advisory retainer format. And we meet quarterly to review their financials together, to talk about, do we want to make any tweaks to their tax strategy? We do projections to see, hey, are we withholding enough? Are we paying in enough in estimated payments? Have we considered that? I don't know, like, I have a client that he's going to start doing implants now. He's a dentist. And he just bought all this new machinery and equipment that he's going to need to be able to offer that service. He's remodeling his whole office to fit all of that. So we're proactively talking about, okay, what is that going to mean from a tax strategy standpoint next year? Because you have all these expenses.
Hmm.
And we are constantly having these conversations. So yeah, it's nice. It's fun to like have that relationship, understand the client's business that well, and they feel like they're supported. They feel like when they need to make a big decision, they're not scared to reach out to me and be like, oh my God, I'm gonna get like billed for every second that I'm on the phone with her. And it's a mutual beneficial where we both know what's going on all the time.
Hmm. So you and I both have had clients that have came to us after. So we'll take your dentist example where you're having those conversations proactively versus reactively. What's the difference in the conversation with somebody? So let's say that guy would have came to you this time of year and he did that last year. Would it be a different conversation?
Absolutely. Because this time of year, all we can do is book whatever happened, right? Like we're putting the numbers on the form from what happened versus now we're being intentional and we're talking about, hey, since you're gonna have all these write-offs in 25, in 26, why don't we maybe think about triggering some gains on some of your investments that you have to take advantage of the lower tax bracket? So there's like all these other random little things that you don't think are connected, but that I'm thinking about that he's like, oh, that I hadn't thought about that. That's a really good idea. Um, it's really fun. And I mean, I'm a nerd about this stuff. And then the worst, I cannot tell you how many times I've had people call me this time of year saying I sold my business last year. What can I do to not pay tax on the sale of my business? And I'm like, buddy, too late.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do. And
The
speaking of
contract
sale of
has been signed.
speaking of sale of business, there's also a strategy, and it's a more complex strategy, but there's strategy of how you can sell that business to actually help with lowering the tax bill on that sale of business. But it's about engaging somebody like yourself to keep that gain from where everything that you sold the business for, it goes right back to the IRS.
Mhm.
And that's some of the stuff you work with clients on as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like there's asset sales versus stock sales. Like I had a client that sold a business before they were my client, became my client. And of course, the first question I asked is, can I see the contract? Did you sell the assets of the business or did you sell the business itself? They're like, we have no idea what you're talking about. Um, they had sold the stock of the business, and for them in particular, that was not advantageous, and it caused a whole fiasco they were not expecting. And it goes back to, okay, you didn't have the right advise in your an advisor or in your corner when this was happening. And
Yeah.
people are scared sometimes to invest a little bit of money getting help, but they don't realize the opportunity cost of like how much is being left on the table by not getting the help.
hmm Because in these type situations, they're usually working with, I know some of my businesses that have sold, they're dealing with brokerage firms. And so all they're trying to do is get top dollar for the seller. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're not looking at the tax side of the person that's selling,
Mm-hmm.
or they're looking for the buyer, not the seller. And so then you end up with this tax consequence that you don't see it's coming. And then you go to do your tax return in April and you owe way more than you actually anticipated. And
Yep.
that's a lot of what we see this time of year,
Mm-hmm.
because there's nothing we can do about it at this point. It's book
No,
it
once the
however
contract
it
is
happened.
signed, that's how the sale is structured, and we have to follow that on the tax return. Like there's literally nothing we can do. So,
Yeah. So what advice would you, because you hit on something like that, most people don't invest in this proactively. What advice would you give somebody that's like, oh, I am thinking about selling my business in 2 or 3 years? What advice would you give them to start thinking about now?
start working, like start forming your board of advisors, right? Because it's not just a CPA. You also need a good business attorney that's going to protect you on that contract. Like, do not take the standard broker contract that is not protecting you. So start forming that team that's really going to look out for you and your best interest. And again, it all comes back to opportunity cost, right? Like spend a few $1,000s now to save tens of thousands of dollars later. It's kind of like when you go to the doctor, like you go every year for a checkup so that you don't have, I don't know, like cancer, stage 4, and now you have hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical bills. It's the same thing here. Like you want to have somebody that's looking out for you and helping you make decisions along the way and keeping your business healthy, to use the same analogy, so that you don't have this huge cancer down the road that you're like, oh my God, now what do we do about it? There's nothing we can do.
And then there's also when you're looking at selling your business, and I know you and I both have dealt with the same thing as far as like you have people that are wanting to sell their business. So they're wanting to show that profit to sell the business. But then you have tax planning over here where you want to pay the least amount of tax. And sometimes those two don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
They definitely don't. And then you have the business owners that are super aggressive in how they write things off. They're what they consider a business expense. And again, you go back, you want to go sell your business, and now your business was unprofitable the past 10 years. So we talk a lot about that, like, okay, that's why knowing the goal, knowing the end goal is important.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to just leave your business for your kids, like your profit doesn't matter as much. If you're trying to sell, it matters. So we talk a lot about understanding the books, what a buyer is going to look for, helping a buyer understand, like, if there is some tax reduction strategy, maybe that doesn't actually impact cash flow. It's just a tax reduction strategy. But the buyer's probably not sophisticated enough to understand that. So
Hmm.
helping them understand, like, hey, that's, yeah, the return might show a low taxable income, but the business is profitable.
Hmm.
And there is a difference.
Yeah, there's a
So,
huge difference.
mhm.
So before we wrap this up, is there any advice that you would like to just throw out there? Anything, it doesn't even have to be anything we talked about, just any advice that you're seeing this time of year that you would just want, if somebody could take one piece of thing from this that you would
Yeah.
want them to take.
I would say if you're a business owner, you need to have a board of advisors. Like, you need to create a team that you can surround yourself with, that you trust and you feel comfortable asking questions to, and you feel like they have your back. To me, that's the most important thing. Like, client or leads ask me all the time, like, oh, but like, how do you know who the right person is? I'm like, honestly, it's who you feel like you're comfortable asking questions to. Because if you can't ask questions, then how are you going to move your business forward?
Hmm.
So,
Well, if you can't ask questions, you don't. If
yeah.
you don't feel like you have that trust with that person, you don't ask questions. And sometimes I loved what you said about the board of advisors, because sometimes clients come to us and they're not in a great place.
Hmm.
And I know sometimes I say I know more about them than their wives or their significant others, because of the things that we see is a lot different than what if what other people see, because we see the good, bad, and ugly.
Hmm.
And having that relationship with that person, also where you can just pick up the phone and ask a question or send an email and like have that conversation. That's what it's about. That it's about the relationship and being able to form that that bond with that person,
Yeah.
and being able to know I have these trusted people on my team, because
Hmm.
without them, I think John Maxwell calls it the inner circle, where it's your inner circle of
Yeah.
people that advise you on certain business strategies or thing. And that's not what you, with tax prep, that's not what that is. Tax prep
No.
is we report the numbers and that's all it is. It is what it is at that
Yeah.
point. But surrounding yourself with advisors is a whole different thing.
Yeah. And advisors that are also willing to work together. That's my
Yeah.
last bit of advice.
Yes. Yes. Love that. So, Tatiana, I appreciate your time today. I know you're super, super busy at this time of year. I appreciate you. And if you'll, we're going to put all of Tatiana's details in the comments below. So if you want to contact her about anything, you can contact her there. We'll drop all the links after this live is rendered. So I hope this was helpful. And Tatiana, thanks for sharing all of your wisdom with us. And I greatly appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.